Right, okay. Can I play Remember Me? Right, here's one, Mike. This is for you from Lucy. I'm head admin. Can I play around with Moodle template so I can put my, or is it only able to be used by those with courses attached to them?
You certainly can. If you drop elearn@port.ac.uk an email, they can set you up a development site, which is like a sandbox that you can use the template on. We'll set it with the UOP template tool, which is that page which lets you choose the template formats, and then you can apply it and play with the additional headings and styles to have a play with no one else accessing it. Yes, we can do that.
Excellent, thank you, Mike. This session was designed. I didn't run my session this morning, so I thought what perhaps we could do is, because we got the core team here that's delivering a lot of the sessions, and I know Harriet provided a really useful introduction to ABL this morning, is I wonder if we all could share the team's perceptions of what ABL is, if we were actually designing one, because we've all played with our training modules. So Amy, can I get Amy in? What does ABL mean to you? Not to put you on the spot.
Thank you. Well, now I know that blended learning phrase has come under kind of question a little bit, hasn't it? And we are talking about blended learning in terms of the mix of face-to-face and the mix of online learning. For me, the ABL is really a chance to think about the actual learning process that the students are going through. So you kind of take it way back to kind of the why, and think about the balance between different kind of activities, which might be collaboration, it might be knowledge acquisition, it might be about being kind of critical, and kind of thinking about the thought process and the building blocks in that way, and then bringing in the technology to support it. I think for me it means planning your blended delivery from the point of view of what the student will do rather than what you will do, which I think when we look at all of these technology tools, it's very easy to get very excited and, you know, I'm going to use Padlet and I'm going to do this, but I think the principle base that we're using takes it back a step, and it's about mapping the student learning from week to week, and then the rest follows from that. That's probably a bit clumsily explained, but that's
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm just trying to think with my team. Did I see Andre in there somewhere? I did. She's hiding.
Yes, yeah. Hi, Andy.
Andre, what does ABL mean to you?
No, blended learning has been around for an active blended learning has been around for quite a long time. And I think we have sort of reinvented the wheels quite a few times around this concept. And I think for me, the important part is what Amy has said just now, is that you have to understand the purpose and the use of technology in the way that we go forward. It's not just the sake of a technology as such. It's understanding the impact the learning has on the student, the impact it has on the way we think about our engagement with the learning process. And, you know, are we up to date with our understanding of where we would like to go? And for that reason, blended learning is a combination of different principles, different methodologies, and different technologies. But they all have to line up to make sure that we get the desired impact that we would like to have.
Thank you, Andre. That's a lovely explanation. Mr. Langston, are you there? Tom, what does it mean from your perspective, perhaps with because you come at it from the other way with the training hat on, what do you think it means? I think he's with us, isn't he? Oh, perhaps he's not. Stuart Sims. This is a bit like Eurovision. Are you there, Stu?
Winchester calling. Dispar.
No, Dispar.
I think, echoing what Andre and Amy have said, for me, you almost take the blended part out of it, and I think obviously we've been forced to do that now. But if it then just becomes about active learning, and anyone who knows me won't be surprised, the my answer involves co-creation with students. I think it's about engaging with students, and all active learning should be something which engages students in both defining, but there's also for me, those kind of metacognitive processes, the learning about learning, which I think are more important now when they're at a distance. So they need to understand a bit about why we've done things in the way we've done them. And I think things like the template are designed to sort of intentionally signpost and scaffold those ideas, that this is why we're doing things in a particular way. And as such, I think that active blended learning is almost a misnomer, because it's more a philosophy, a thought process, if that's not too woolly an answer, that just suggests that we not do passive things. And we had a session earlier where we were talking about recording narrated PowerPoints, which I think everyone did a fantastic job of doing that sort of thing towards the end of the academic year. But as Paul Hayes said in the introduction this morning, that's not going to be good enough for new students coming in or people expecting a higher level of learning. So for me, active blended learning is a mindset.
Thank you, Stu. Mike, our architect, one of the architects of the template. Mike, what does it mean to you?
Oh, I definitely wasn't reading your Moodle site while I was listening to Stu. I think as Amy was describing the blend between taught sessions, which are face-to-face and online, I think about blended learning along those kind of terms. We talked about flipped learning quite a bit, which is delivering content that could be taught, students could undertake in their own time, so they don't have to do it all at the same time. Really makes those collaborative sessions more engaging for students. You can spend your time with students asking and answering questions, really kind of getting into the subject matter. So it's really optimizing the amount of time that students get for the engaging activities, the collaborative type stuff, and delivering content in the best possible way. So as I say, lecture materials delivered asynchronously, and students collaborating more. So it really kind of amps up the engagement factor that you'd. So yeah, amping up the engagement factor.
Thank you very much. Right, if I can add if I may, so I can remember many years ago, probably 90, standing up in front of a group of academic staff, because I was the L&T lead in geography department at Plymouth many years ago, and doing a session on flexible learning. And I had this OHP, and I've still got them in a folder on my shelf, and it was a spectrum. And it talked about, at one end, you have face-to-face teaching, and you have at the other end full online. And even those days, and for me, active blended learning is about finding your own space on that spectrum in terms of what you actually want to do. And of course, the current COVID crisis has probably pushed us more to the online end of that spectrum. But even in there, it's about finding that blend. And jokingly, I think in one of the sessions I play, if anybody remembers the 1970s Gareth Hunt coffee advert, what's your blend? And it's about putting the right bits in so it's different. Or imagine the other way of doing it is, I often think about it like a pick and mix. Going into a sweetie shop, an old-fashioned sweetie shop, and you've got the jars full of different types of pedagogy on the wall, and you're saying, right, I have one of those and one of those. And Emma Winter, who's in marketing, summed this up quite nice. She said, well, I like pink shrimps, but I wouldn't want a whole bag of them. And I think with active blended learning, it's changing that diet over the course of the semester, over the course of TB1, over the course of your module, that perhaps you're doing something every week. And of course, that's pedagogically led, so it's in line with our underpinning principles, but you're just changing that diet a little bit every week, which keeps the students really engaged, but not being perhaps swooned by the technology that's there. And that's it's pedagogically led, that's our underpinning principle, but then being very creative with the kind of technologies that we do have. But equally, and I think, Mike, you cover this in your session, is that once you have gone to that flip state and you're doing it online, your resources have been created, and you can switch back quite quickly. But also, when we do come out the other end of this, think of the amount of resources that you're going to have, that your pedagogy will never be the same again, because you're going to be able to be really flexible in terms of how we actually we take it forward. But I think the final thing I'd say is that there's this tendency, I think, with it that you reinvent the wheel. And I don't think active blended learning and what we're trying to do is about reinventing the wheel. And again, this is the planning sessions that we're going to run. It's all about look at what you do now, look at what works, where you get the high level of engagement, and look at the ways, can I flip that? Can I do that online? Yes, no. If so, is it going to be asynchronous or synchronous? Does the levelness of my students kick in there? Do I need to think about the kind of technology that they've got access to? But certainly use what you have at the moment as a starting point rather than perhaps starting again. And I think that will give confidence to actually to engage and actually start playing. And again, that's how we've kind of like structured this week, is to give you as many opportunities to see different perspectives of possibly similar types of technology, but in the way that they can actually be designed and then deployed to do all sorts of different things. Anybody, colleagues, we're sitting here as a team, we'd love to hear what you say. Would anybody like to chip in your own thoughts on what ABL is, what it actually means to you? We've got Philip. The lecture has been characterized as a process to get material from the lecturer's notes to a student's notes without passing through the brain. Active learning gets at least a student's brain. Yes, getting them to do things. But also, if I may, the other thing I think is really important, I think we're going to try and draw out, and I know, Stuart, you might want to chip in on this as well, is how we create the relational aspect of it online as well. You know, there's been some really interesting articles in The Guardian and the THE that constantly reinforce you've still got to create that online community. You've still got to feel the students have got that online. You know, I've taught and worked in industry and done digital kind of like experience management, and people want to know somebody's at the other end of the phone, that they're listening, and you've got that immediacy of contact. So it's about how to create that. Stu, would you like to talk about the sessions you're going to run on that?
Yes, so there's a session at 10 o'clock tomorrow, which is about building online communities, which draws on some resources which we put up on Moodle, which emphasizes the importance of social presence in developing a community of inquiry. And essentially, it's just about making, even asynchronously, it feel like you're a part of a learning community and your students are part of it. So simple technological solutions such as just recording little videos of yourself, using photos, that sort of thing, just to make it feel like people are there. I think Tom wasn't here earlier, Andy, when you tried to call on him, but in our session about Nearpod earlier, we had quite an interesting discussion around how it's really hard at the moment to do those things that everyone's got used to tacitly, where you sort of look at a classroom and you just know what's going on. You know who's paying attention, you know who's not paying attention, you know who is paying attention, is maybe struggling with it, you know who wants to ask a question but seems a bit timid. All those sorts of things are really challenging at the moment. And I think the points that this discussion Andre and Harriet having in the chat about pedagogy and people first, in the Nearpod session, we were talking about how it is all whiz bang and lots of bright colors and fun options, but you should just stop and think about what it is you would do in a classroom and then how you can replicate that online. And those sorts of things are naturally going to tend towards the building of community, because it is about getting students to talk to each other, talk to you. But we just need to work harder and be more conscious of the things that are going to happen tacitly. But as I say, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, please come along and we'll unpack that a bit more.
Given that we're doing selfish promotions, Catherine Murgatroyd, would you like to do what about the role of EDI in active blended learning, Catherine? What do you think the takeaways are that you're going to focus on this week?
Oh, hello, Andy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Coincidentally, in my mind, I was just rehearsing my 4 o'clock. Excellent. So, EDI, what are the takeaways? I guess the focus this week for us is two things: accessible content, accessible curriculums. And they sound very similar because they have accessible in the term, but actually they're very different. So how can we make our learning content and our materials in Word and PowerPoint and on Moodle accessible for all students? So that's thinking of all characteristics and every learning preference and every set of circumstances. And how can we make our curriculum speak to students so that they feel they belong and they can see themselves reflected in the material? So I feel really kind of excited to be delivering those sessions. And the first one is at 4 o'clock. And I think it would be great if as many people could come as possible. And we've got another 2 on Wednesday and Friday.
Thank you, Catherine. People, that's a really a question here, right? How are you advising people to deal with increased workload? It seems that we have great sessions on how to redesign things, but no discussion of how this can be manageable. I think it's an important question to be asked. Would anybody of the team, Amy, Harriet, would you like to respond to that one as a starter?
I can't respond formally because I don't have responsibility for workload, but I can absolutely share in what Fevis has said here, and that some of this is really time consuming, and it's kind of a CPD plus activity for us over the summer. I think because of the daunting task ahead, it's easy to feel like everything has to be in place and everything has to be ready to go by the start of term. But realistically, students are looking for the kind of the first few weeks of their content. And as you would with any module, you kind of want to be able to adapt as you go through. So I would ask people to perhaps think about what is manageable for them. Pre-recording any material will be time consuming initially, but you kind of buy yourself back the time a bit later. I think it would be really helpful for us to hear about what's taking up the time. Is it getting used to the tools? Is it the actual creation of materials? And then we can help to understand where support might be able to come in. I think there's a good opportunity to share resources and to try not to duplicate. I can't say much more beyond that. I don't know if Harriet is here and willing to come in.
I am here, yes. And I think in all of the Q&A sessions that there have been so far, there have been questions to the Vice-Chancellor, the University Executive Board, the workstream leads about workload. And I think everybody should be aware that we are aware of the workload implications of this and the need for everybody, and we all are working very hard to prepare things for the coming academic year, and the need to do that if we are to have students and courses to teach for the coming academic year. But I think what we're trying to do in the Learning and Teaching workstream, and why we have the Blended Learning Festival this week, is to try and provide as much support and training to staff to help you to make this as manageable as possible. And I think Amy's absolutely said the right thing there. We need to think about what we can do and how we are doing things now to try and find time for later, and also where we can share good practice and share good ideas and perhaps share content. I think some of the things that we're trying to do and why we're suggesting more asynchronous activity and recording activity is it's good for the students because they can access that when they need to, rather than if they've got difficulties with Wi-Fi access and so on. It's better for them if it's asynchronous, but also it's better for you because you can record those things when you are able to, rather than finding you're very busy when you're trying to design and plan for other activities. So I think the whole university is working very, very hard at the moment. And I think you need to be discussing with your line managers, your heads of school and so on about your workload. But there has to be an understanding that we all do have to do this if we are going to be successful and we are going to have students and courses for the coming academic year. But I would like to thank you all for everything that you're doing. I think we're all in this together. It's a joint endeavour, and I think it's one that it's worth doing. So I hope you're making the most of all the opportunities available in the Blended Learning Festival and the things that we as a learning and teaching work stream are trying to provide for you to help and support.
Thank you both. That's really helpful. If I'd just like to add something, if I may. I'm just conscious with these types of events, having done them in the past, that it's very easy for us to stand up and show lots of really cool stuff. And we do this and we do it, and it looks really flashy. But I'm also conscious that colleagues sit there and go, I have no idea how to do that. I'd like to do that, but I'm not there yet. And I think this isn't about perfection. This isn't about being high level. It really is about finding a space around your own approach to learning and teaching that we talk a lot about student centered, but I also think it's about you and finding a space that you're comfortable with in terms of what you feel comfortable being able to deliver around the tell and the blended, and coming to ask for help around that, because that's what we're here for now. Today's a bit of a showcase, but if anybody needs any more guidance or support, then there will be future training events to take you through. But you know, I did a presentation last week for something else, and I lost count of how many takes it took to try and get the video perfect. And I got to the point where, nope. And I actually jokingly said in the video, said, this is my umpteenth take. Whatever happens now, I'm going for it. And it just adds that level of kind of like relational, humanistic bit to it, that we're all human. We're not here producing films that are going to get Oscars. It'd be nice, but and I think students, from my feedback in the past, has been students like the honesty of hearing a bit of traffic in the past, or the kids interrupting you when you're doing a video. So don't necessarily strive for perfection, because it might do your head in, but just do what you can do with the resources that you've got. And I think you'll be amazed by what you can actually achieve just with some really simple stuff that we're going to show you this week. And I think that's all we can ask you to do. We had another question from Rebecca. Is any information about learning difficulties, Asperger's, ADHD, or dyslexia? Sorry. Yes, there is a session later on in the week with Denise Mayer talking about student wellbeing. So I think that will be covered on that one. I'm hearing views on the optimum delivery for lectures, podcasts, etc. I have read that 45 minutes is an ideal podcast duration, but lectures only 6 minutes. What is your view on this? I have a view on that, but I might share that to the team first. Mike, are you there?
I am. I do have a view on that. I would recommend 5 to 10 minutes for lecture materials, and break. So if you have to deliver a 1 hour lecture, say, break it up into those chunks of 5 to 10 minutes. It really helps students when they're managing their time, especially as they'll be studying multiple modules at the same time. It will seem a lot not such a big task. If you've got a 1 hour video to watch and you have to concentrate through the whole thing, it's a lot more encouraging if you can break it down into those chunks. You can go away and come back in between them, even though you can press pause. Actually, students seeing those 5 to 10 minute chunks is actually quite motivational. You can also mix in knowledge check questions in between your videos in that way, signpost other activities and help resources. So yeah, I'd say 5 to 10 minutes would be ideal for lectures.
Anybody else like to come in on that one?
Sorry.
Fire away.
Can I ask my question? Sorry, it's Peter here, Peter Wainwright. No, my question, slant or suggestion would be, I think we need to find ways to increase the teamwork. I mean, I'm totally amazed at the level of professional advice from all you folks. I mean, there's literally no shortage of help in terms of how to, etc., etc. But I think the way one thing we need to try and develop is a sense of buddying up. So every module coordinator should feel they have a buddy, and really it could be this buddy in a completely different area. When they look at it, say, hey, have a look at my Moodle site, and you say, hey, buddy, you've got far too many quizzes on there, or have you thought of doing it this way, or some silly thing like I've spotted on some websites. I said, just don't tick the thing which says display on the course. So when they click on assessments and details, they get all this stuff about in this font and that font. I said, just untick that thing, because when it appears on the students, they're getting reinforced with all this admin type stuff, and people don't realize that. And so I think we need a culture of kind of friendly peer review. So come October, all module coordinators can say, yeah, someone I trust has sat down with me in one session or 2 or 3 sessions and given me a kind of thumbs up, so I know I'm going in the right direction. That's all.
Pete, I couldn't agree with you. I think that's a fantastic idea. One of the ABL, I worked briefly at Roehampton University, and at Roehampton I set up the business school strategy framework for ABL. And in that process, we were quite heavily influenced by Northampton, because Northampton have gone through this And in fact, on Thursday morning, we've actually got Professor Ali Armanelli, who was the dean that took Northampton through to active blended learning, just doing a session for us on Thursday. And I've developed some resources around that. And one of the central principles of ABL that came from Northampton was the role of teamwork and actually having that dialogue and actually sharing those experiences across. One of the colleagues will be aware that in addition to this site that we've got, there is also now a Moodle site that contains 5, well, it's one introductory site and then 5 individual sites that can 5 or 6 individual sites that have got a lot of this additional resource material on it for you to go through. One of the planning activities I've developed is like a big interactive PowerPoint, and it's based on the ABC design learning framework that they created at UCL. You can do that individually or you can put it online as a team, but it encourages people to come together and start identifying e-activities that you might start doing. So we create some resources for that exact purpose, but you're talking something a little bit more informal, which well, we could possibly go and investigate that, because I think that's got a lot of merit. Should we just look at anybody else from the team like to chip in on the comments so far? Amy, Andre?
I'd love to.
Fire away, Mike.
Just reading up on Philip's comments about how students' willingness to do the preparation work with flipped delivery. We run a number of sessions this week on. Who am I talking to? I'm talking to people at work. Once. It won't be a sec.
Keep going, Mike. This is going on YouTube. That's great.
So yes, we run a number of sessions on knowledge check activities, because they're really key to check whether which areas students have really struggled with, which could do with recapping. But they also serve another purpose, which is checking that students have actually done the prep work you wanted them to. There's also a really good report within Moodle called Course Participation, which I'll put the location of that in the chat. But that shows a yes or no to whether students have viewed a particular resource. So if that resource is your Moodle book containing all your videos of your lecture, you can see very quickly who has engaged and who hasn't, and it's a good straw poll. But just to reiterate, the knowledge checks are really key for that. I'd really kind of push that point. Get students to do the knowledge checks, and then you'll have an idea of who has done it and who hasn't, and what they're struggling with.
If I may add to that, I think Amy was nodding as well, so I'll invite her in a tech. But the other thing I would also say at the start of your modules is create that narrative with the students and actually tell them how the module's going to work. Don't just expect them to show up and get it and understand what you're actually planning for them. Actually have a little video at the top of your Moodle page saying, welcome back, challenging times. I've had a bit of fun, and this is what it's going to look like. This is what I expect from you. This is what you can expect from us. But tell the story and set out the expectations of what it's actually going to look like, and actually involve them very early on, and just make it, embed feedback opportunities all the way through. So if they are struggling, at the earliest sense that you're getting a feel this isn't actually working right. They judge us. If I do sessions on service excellence, and they judge us like Amazon, they judge us like Waitrose, and we need to be quite responsive to that relationship thing. And are they listening to us? We're not in the classroom, therefore they're not listening. We are. And I personally think when we do these sessions, I think the quality of the teaching and delivery that's going to come out of this experience is ultimately going to put us on a new path to where we were before. Amy, you were nodding when Mike was speaking. Amy, anything to add?
Yeah, just to echo that, really, in terms of it's quite an exciting time to be in education and witness this kind of revolution that's happening, but also to acknowledge that we have been doing this for decades, and we've been doing it very well as an institution. So there is already so much expertise, and I think we're all finding that we're learning a lot from everybody as part of this. So I think we do need to kind of just take a moment and pause and think, what has been achieved so far. Most people would have said was kind of unthinkable in terms of the way the education sector just in 2 weeks went fully online in schools, in colleges. It's been quite incredible, and I think that although it is demanding at the moment, in hindsight, the gains will hopefully be worth it. I completely agree with Peter about teamwork, and I've been reflecting on that in these sessions, in that having somebody who is a host and who's kind of in the background supporting is quite important when there's a large group. So I think if you are team teaching in any way, that's really helpful, though I know that's not possible for everybody.
I think Tom has joined us. Tom, are you there?
Yes, I am. I was just helping someone with something because they can't attend a session later in the week. So sorry, I did that earlier, but I'm back.
Excellent. I just wanted to say, because I'm sorry, you weren't in when we were doing the round robin. I just wondered, would you like to, what does it all mean to you? Because you're one of our key trainers and such. What do you think the ABL and what you'd like people to get away from the week from your perspective?
Well, I think kind of echoing what I've heard sort of from Amy and Steph and yourself just a second ago is things are changing vastly. I think for me, it's about that. When I worked in ICGS many years ago, there was people who do campus teaching and there was people that do distance teaching, and a lot of it became, well, here's my campus-based handbook. I'll put that up online, and that's my distance learning module. And obviously that kind of came through as, well, this doesn't work, and they did a massive sort of shift in their distance learning teaching and have led the university in a lot of distance learning material. But I think for me, it's that kind of, if we can produce whatever technology tool we use, be it Moodle or Vvox or Nearpod or whatever else you might like yourself, I think it's that sort of ability to pick what you need, use it with your student, but we have a good digital resource that will serve you when we are back to normal. It's like we have a good digital package now. It doesn't matter then if you're campus-based or distance learning. What you'll have is good resources. And I think that's where, and again, from what like Peter and everyone has talked about as well, it's that if we have something that's worth showing off and has been peer reviewed and is a good shared experience, we can only hopefully improve on that going forward.
Cheers, Tom. Just come back to Pepper. Students are used to exciting vlogs and presentations. Indeed, they are. Will there be people to do post-production? So I think I'm going to answer that to start with, and then everybody else chip in. So I think I would certainly, as part, I think an important resource here, in addition to Active and Tallies, please talk to your online course developers, because they've got lots of skills that you can actually use. But you'd be amazed also the quality of the presentation that you can generate with some of the tools that we're actually going to show you how to use this week as well. So Mike, Tom, I'm not sure, or team, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, certainly. I'd say I'd echo what Stephen Webb said in a session last week, that it doesn't have to be Hollywood quality to get a good message across. As you say, I think with Panopto you can create very good content very easily. You can do things like inserting questions within resources, linking to other resources within the video very easily. But it's a high quality of video that gets produced. So I think that the meaning and the learning content is key, and it doesn't have to be Hollywood quality to get there. As Andy says, go and see your online course developers and they can really kind of guide you through that process. But just using things like the university template kind of is really kind of well designed. So if that kind of bookends your content, you're already onto a winner. But yeah, use a variety of tools and get an overview from these sessions this week, and I think you'll be surprised what you can produce very easily.
Andre, please.
Andy, can I just chip in here? We are sort of at a very new lifestyle here, but something to remember, some research has been done where they have measured the learning and the what students remembered from sessions, and they have the old boring lecturing style and they have the tech talk option, and there was no difference in the learning that has happened. And I think that is something that we have to remember in the way that we design and create and engage. The second thing that we need to understand is we have, if we put the student first, we have to understand the place. If we have difficulty in engaging with the workload and everything that we need to do now, the students are, some of them, in a worse place scenario than what we are. And we have to communicate and have a dialogue with our students to understand how they experience their learning. We should not just anticipate that if we put everything or throw everything at them, that learning is going to happen.
Yes, Andre, I couldn't agree more. I'm sorry, I was just waiting for the next bit to go with that. I couldn't agree with you more. Can
I,
Tom, please.
Sorry, just very quickly, I've thrown in the chat. I do a session on content capture and distance learning in our normal training package. I've given everyone access. It's no longer Google Communities. It's now called Google Currents, which is just wonderful. But in that, there are some videos, and I've shared one as well, which is kind of like 5 top tips to get you started with academic vlogs. So it's that kind of idea that, like Mike said, it doesn't have to be Hollywood quality. It can be using your webcam, it can be using your phone, it can be using a tablet, whatever that might be. It's more about the content and the message you're trying to produce and how to structure yourself. But I've given everyone access, and I will be going forward making this into a Moodle site, which will be again then available through all the other sort of normal channels for people to access and use along with the training.
Thank you, Tom. The other thing I'd add on to that, because I've been working with some, is the great opportunity to just go back to basics, even things like PowerPoint presentations. And, you know, we've got to avoid death by PowerPoint and just doing the voiceover on a PowerPoint. I think we've all realized that. But even how your PowerPoints look now and the level of information you're putting on a PowerPoint and actually making them interactive and making them more visual and doing the voiceover and having the confidence to do that as well. I think even just the basics right mean a lot to students in this day and age. And think about potentially almost branding your resources. Make sure you're using the Portsmouth branding like we've tried to do during the week, because it just makes everything look really consistent and very professional. And I've always found that when you put a little bit of time and effort into getting things that look nice, the students respond well, because it does give the impression that time and effort has actually gone into their thought and their creation. But, you know, gone are the days of black and white text on a PowerPoint. You know, think about it. If any of you are slightly more advanced in PowerPoint, even things like PowerPoint transitions is a really nice way of just adding a little bit of distinctive content into basic PowerPoints. I'm running a session later in the week on tips for virtual field trips. But even using PowerPoint as like a mini website where you're using action settings to create navigation, because you can now embed content and voiceovers in images, and the add-ins allows you to put in websites and quizzes. So even basic software like PowerPoint is actually quite powerful if you need an accessible starting point. I think we want you to be engaged in the process and find a level. So have a play. I think this week is about encouraging you to have a play, but pedagogically informed play. I think I'll cover myself there, but making sure that's the driver, but then understanding what these different types of technologies do, because some of them have are better than others, and some of them have limitations. And I think probably, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, but at the moment, the university is running Nearpod. We will have Vvox, and we will also coming a site license or license for Padlet. So one of the comments a lot of people has made is, oh, there's too much. Are there 3 areas that we could focus on? We've listened to that, and there are, but that isn't saying that you can't use anything else. But there are 3 core areas of IT support or apps that we're going to use to get that level of consistency, but by no means clipping people's wings if they want to do their own thing around that. Tom, do you want to add anything to that? Because you've been quite instrumental in pulling all that together.
No, I think you've summed it up very nicely. We currently have 300 licenses for Nearpod. We have about 76 left of that 300 pot. I've been dealing with that since my session this morning of adding more people on. Vvox will be a site license over the next 3 years, and Padlet is being sort of signed off at the moment, and I believe it's for the first year at least we should be able to have as many as we need, and then it will be a case by case basis going forward through them. But obviously we will have them for a certain number of people, and not everyone's going to want to use them. So it will very much be we should be able to incorporate anyone that actually wants to use these technologies within their teaching, because some people use more than one, some people only want to use one, and some people use certain things in certain ways. So as Andy says, come and have a chat, and we can sort of work that out going forward.
That's great. And again, just to reiterate that we are running sessions this week on all these different types of software. So please just check the program and feel free to come along. What we're trying to do with the sessions is instructional, yes, but also lots of different examples of how you do it. I'm running a session tomorrow afternoon, which is called Recipes for Creative and Online Play. But we tried to create some recipe cards to give you some short, snappy starter ideas, main course, desserts, using different apps and levelness around that. So please come along. The outcome of that session is that we'd like you to create your own recipe cards and actually share them, so we can actually see the types of things that people are doing. And then just on that one, on the website, you'll see at the top, it says join the discussion. One of the boards is, how is your perception of ABL or enhancement actually going to change during the course of the festival? So please put comments up. Let us know how you're thinking, how this festival is kind of like impacting on your understanding, confidence to actually do something a little bit different. Right, how are we doing? Philip, sorry, I'm conscious of the time, colleagues, so we'll do a couple more. So, Philip, frequency of assessment. The guidance in BEL has been to avoid frequent summative assessments such as Moodle quizzes. However, is there a higher frequency of smaller summative tests of benefit in ABL? Who'd like to answer that one to start with?
I'll have a go.
Go on in, Tom, Mike.
So just coming back to my knowledge checks again, I think it's really important that you have a small knowledge check every week to kind of ascertain that kind of level of understanding for the subject matter. But it doesn't have to be that technical. You could just ask a question via a forum. What is the section you struggled most with in the learning content this week? Or you could have a 5-question or 10-question Moodle quiz, really getting into the nitty-gritty of the content. If you feel your students are being kind of overloaded with assessment, even formative assessment, then just bring it down a touch and just use a forum to deliver that. But I really do believe that you should be asking those questions on a weekly basis, because they're consuming those initial materials on their own in isolation. So you do need to ask that question regularly, but it doesn't have to be very, very in depth. It can be quite straightforward.
Absolutely, and I think we have the kit to enable. So, for example, one of my recipe cards as a knowledge check was a really simple word search activity in H5P. That's just keywords associated with strategy that you get them to at the end and say, right, from the session today, I've embedded 15. There's 15 key associated words in this word cloud. I'm not going to give you the vocabulary list. You have to go and find them, but they're covered in the session. So there's all sorts of different ways of doing it. Amy, because that was an assessment one, is there anything you'd like to add to that yourself?
No, not really. I think that's kind of summarised all of that there. I think I'm quite enjoying the conversation about how to set the pace in Moodle that's happening in the chat, and thinking about how much content we reveal at one time. So I've been a bit distracted with that, I'm afraid.
That's all right. I think with that one, my answer, I think my input to that would be a little bit ask. Always ask. I think it's this constant thing we've got to get used to. Is we're good at it already, but it's this constant reaffirmation. Are we talking to the students? We're not waiting to midpoint. We're giving the opportunities for feedback. So you could take a Padlet and embed that at the top of your Moodle page and just put feedback wall. At any point, if you've got any feedback, please post. So it's about constantly creating the dialogue with colleagues. Right, should we start wrapping up? I think it feels a bit like question time. Let's go around. Anybody from the team got any final comments? I'm going to give you a minute only to just round off. If anybody like to chip in. Mike?
My only other thing to add is that I really need a cup of tea. So I'm going to go get one before my session starts. But yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit. please drop us a line if you've got any kind of specific questions. We're really happy to kind of get involved in that. Is all I'd say.
Okay. Anybody else? Amy?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Just to say, please do join us for the rest of the week and spread the word to any colleagues who might be interested. It is useful to attend these sessions with somebody from your course team, because obviously in kind of clusters, some approaches may get taken forward a bit easier, as Peter was saying, with the teamwork. I'm also going to get some tea and go into our Moodle template session, so I will hope to see some of you there.
Thank you very much. Andre, final thought?
Don't be afraid to be a dinosaur. Learning in the process is very important, and you make progress within your limitations, so don't be afraid to ask, don't be afraid to share, and don't be afraid to engage.
Thank you. Catherine?
Thank you, Andy. Just to say, do come along at 4 o'clock to Making Accessible Content. And equally, I've responded in the chat because there's been some fantastic co-creation coming out of a student-led group in partnership with Wellbeing. It's called Purple Lantern, and they've accumulated and designed a wealth of resources for supporting students who are neurodiverse. And we're currently opening a Moodle sandbox as an access point for staff to get on and have a look at all of those materials. And equally, there's a web page that's been designed by Beatrice, and unfortunately I can't remember her last name, in psychology, with information and guidance similarly. So that's really exciting. Do have a look, and hopefully people will come along at 4 o'clock for accessible content.
Right, so we finish quickly. Stuart?
Nothing to add that colleagues haven't said more eloquently than I'm likely to, other than the fact that I've really enjoyed having a forum to get lots of people from across the institution to throw ideas around about what's working, what's challenging, and I'd like to see this carry on after this week.
Okay. Tom?
Similar to everyone else, it's been a wonderful conversation, and I think to the point of we have lots of technology, but like Andre said, maybe sometimes going back to being a dinosaur and thinking what works pedagogically, we can then help you fit the technology in afterwards.
And on that note, colleagues, can I say thank you very much for joining us. We're going to do this at 3 o'clock every day this week. Each day is an opportunity to just reflect on the themes during the course of the day. But there's also a more specific theme, and again, details are on the website. So thank you for joining us. Hopefully you found that useful, and we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much.